companies really hate remote workers.
It's time now to come back into the office.
Companies have been really trying everything to get their workers to come back to the office.
I just think it's best for companies to give their employees a bit of flexibility there.
How do you tell them, I'm not coming back?
Like, I started by telling them I wanted to be independent. They couldn't offer me that.
Stand together! Don't turn back!
Are companies desperate to have you back in the office? It's about control.
Remember the initial enthusiasm for remote work during the pandemic? Companies were eager to hire thousands of remote workers, but now the situation has changed. Companies are increasingly demanding that people return to the office. So what has caused this shift in companies' attitudes towards remote work? Before we dive into details, let's go over the brief history of remote work. In 2020, almost every major company announced that it would permanently send and hire remote workers. Why? Because that was the modern way of working, right? Here's an example. In May 2020, Facebook started planning for permanent remote workers. Mark Zuckerberg did a live-streamed staff meeting on his Facebook page. He declared to employees that in the coming decade, up to half of the company's massive workforce would be working remotely. The trend towards remote work seemed to signal a meaningful change in the way we work. However, just 3 years later, the data tells a different story. An overwhelming 90% of companies are now planning to enforce a return-to-office mandate by the end of 2024. And this is shocking. Almost 30% of these businesses are even threatening to fire employees if they refuse to comply with in-office requirements. Only a mere 2% of business leaders have declared that remote work will never be a requirement for their employees. This renewed trend to abolish remote work has been fueled by CEOs openly expressing their dissatisfaction with the remote work model, arguing that productivity, collaboration, and employee engagement suffer without the physical office environment. By the way, do you know what the funniest thing about this is? The way companies are trying to lure their employees back into the office. Businesses have tried various ways to encourage employees back to the workplace, such as DJ parties and yoga classes, but without success. However, dedicated desks have now become particularly important. The idea of hot desking, where people share workstations, doesn't work well anymore in the new way of working. Employees are not happy about sharing workstations and have concerns about using communal keyboards, adjusting chairs, and feeling disconnected from their work environment. In a bid to recapture their workforce, companies like Salesforce are undergoing a strategic overhaul, reinstating dedicated desk assignments. With office occupancy in major U.S. cities at half of pre-pandemic levels, employers are reevaluating their approach. The need for personalized spaces embraced by employees as an essential element has ignited this transformative shift. In contrast, hot desking, akin to a frantic game of musical chairs, has left employees stranded, some literally forced to work in break rooms. What was once a mundane office fixture has now evolved into the focal point of an intense battle to reclaim the workforce. But why do the companies want their employees back so desperately? The first problem that companies encountered was the empty offices. Empty offices that they were paying for. You see, in 2023, the national office vacancy rate skyrocketed to an unprecedented 19.6%, inflicting crippling financial losses on businesses because wasted office space drained over $300,000 annually. Amidst the turmoil, the exorbitant costs of labor and retail have only escalated, exacerbating the already dire post-pandemic landscape. Unsurprisingly, many big company offices have lots of empty space. A study by Density found that in 13 cities, office spaces were empty for more than a third of the workday. The study tracked 502,000 working hours across 2,000 spaces and found that 181,000 hours were spent in rooms that were never used, even though they cost businesses millions of dollars. This problem of empty rooms is a sign of a more significant issue affecting corporate America's return to work. Despite paying for these spaces, companies are seeing meager usage rates. For example, one room that costs $87,000 per year was empty 83% of the time. In this study alone, over $25 million was wasted annually on underused spaces. This information challenges companies to rethink how they design their offices. Smaller meeting rooms are being used more, while large open floors with unassigned seating are not. What we are witnessing right now is a deeper economic problem than it seems. Why? A storm is looming in the commercial real estate world. Vacant properties and falling values are putting banks, everyday people, and local governments at risk. Over $1.5 trillion in U.S. commercial real estate loans are due by 2025, and property values could drop by as much as 40%. This poses a major threat to small regional banks because 44% of office loans are now in negative equity, potentially leading to catastrophic defaults and significant losses. Cities like San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and New York heavily rely on commercial property taxes to fund essential services, and they are facing substantial revenue shortfalls due to struggling office districts. The ripple effect is severe, impacting local economies and pension funds. This crisis is not just a financial problem, it is a threat to entire cities and their people. Here's another argument for why companies hate remote work. Companies think people should be in the office instead of at home so they can see if the employees are actually doing work. But the era of remote work is far from over, and its rise has shaken the foundations of traditional office life. Since the pandemic began, remote work has surged, with 40% of U.S. employees now working from home at least once a week, 5 times more than in 2019. Despite these challenges, companies need to adapt because remote work isn't just a temporary trend, it's the future. Those unwilling to innovate may find themselves left behind, while visionary leaders will thrive by embracing this new way of working. You would ask now, but isn't remote work more effective and better for the company? So here's the general picture. The era of hybrid work models is skyrocketing in the United States, as revealed by survey data that tracks working patterns from 2019 to 2024. An astonishing 53% of American workers reported embracing a hybrid work approach in the second quarter of 2024. The outbreak of the pandemic prompted an unprecedented shift to remote work. Since then, countless individuals have reshaped their home and work routines, discovering that a hybrid work model offers unparalleled flexibility compared to the traditional on-site work structure.
Folks are coming in 3 or 4 days. We're seeing more, visitation on Mondays. The visitation rate is certainly higher in the middle of the week. That rate rose to, 73% roughly midweek days. And then Fridays, I think, there's no mystery about Friday is much lower, around 40%.
Remote work may seem like it would make work tasks more efficient, but the actual results are more complicated. The effects of telework are not straightforward. Specific industries like professional services may have seemed ready to become more productive with remote setups, but others, like restaurants, struggled because some tasks require being there in person. When we look at the data carefully, we find a surprising truth. Remote work hasn't significantly sped up or slowed down productivity across the board. Industries that could do remote work only saw small increases in productivity during the pandemic, but these trends already existed before the pandemic hit. Even though working from home drastically changed daily life, it hasn't made a big difference in overall productivity. The mixed results suggest that other things like social distancing and problems with supply chains played a bigger role in how productive people were. As we head toward a future where some people work remotely and some people work in offices, it's still uncertain how it will affect productivity in the long run. Working from home might encourage new ideas, or it might stop new ideas from happening by keeping people from collaborating in person. Moreover, here is the Stanford study on the subject. The rise of hybrid working hasn't seemed to slow down productivity, and it's winning over businesses due to its positive impact on both hiring and keeping employees. It's clear that the trend of working from home is set to surge in the future, thanks to ongoing technological advancements aimed at enhancing remote work. This means that the pandemic hasn't just caused an initial surge in remote work, but it's also set the stage for a long-term explosion in this way of working. So the productivity is generally there. However, companies still think it has gotten worse, but we need to look at the profits. Turns out people working from home has actually been better for the company. A study of 554 public companies with a total of 26.7 million employees found that companies saw a 21% increase in sales between 2020 and 2022, with fully flexible, either entirely remote or allowing employees to choose when to work in an office, after adjusting for industry differences. In reality, remote work has become an unstoppable force, favored by both workers and employers for its undeniable advantages. Workers cherish the flexibility, valuing hybrid work arrangements as much as an 8% pay raise. For companies, remote work is a financial boon. Downsizing office spaces slashes real estate costs, while a broader talent pool increases hiring efficiency. Workers are more loyal, quitting less often, which cuts recruitment and training expenses. Yet, even in the face of a looming economic downturn, experts doubt companies will abandon remote work. The financial benefits are too great, and although it seems that companies hate remote work, they must love the profits it brings.